Welcome, everyone. We'll give everyone another minute or so to trickle in, and then we'll get started. Are we recording? Yes. Okay, amazing. Okay, we can kind of go ahead and get started. As you guys can see, sorry, I was getting feedback. As you guys can see, we have a couple extra faces on here today for our webinar, so I think it's going to be a great session. I'm gonna share my screen and then we can go ahead and get started. Let's see which one I can share. Hmm. Oh, no. It's having me go into systems, but what is going on? Oh, sure. Let's try again. What's a webinar without some technical difficulties? All right. Hopefully you guys can see this. Mhm. Oh, sorry. Here we go. Um, all right. Okay, awesome. I think now we're in a good spot to start the webinar. So with that, I'll kick it off to Karina to start.
Okay, hi everyone. So just wanted to quickly clarify. So today that we're running session 4 of our bootcamp series. So again, these run in a cycle of 4. So next week we're going to go back to session 1 in case you haven't watched that one live. But just to kind of reiterate, so if you're watching this, you're most likely or you're most likely an onboarding recruiter, which means that you have a goal of reaching 5 first round interviews within a span of 30 days or 2 first round interviews and 1 hire. Once you hit that metric, we will then be able to introduce you to a dedicated account manager who will provide some dedicated support related to, the roles that you recruit best for on Paraform. And so if you're an onboarding recruiter, you have either me, Aaron, or Sean as a dedicated, or not dedicated, as your point of contact here. Or you are probably in contact with our strategic partnerships team. And so what we have here is, so Aaron, do you want to click on the Notion page? So as like a one-stop shop, we do have a Notion page, which is kind of like your home base, and I will send it in the chat here. But this just kind of reiterates some of like what your goal is, as well as the timeline for our bootcamp series. So again, we're here on week 4, so building a portfolio on Paraform. And then there's more details on like what activation means. And then if you scroll all the way down to the very bottom, you'll see more details on like what the sessions will cover. And then beneath that, we have some resources that recruiters find really helpful with getting started on Paraform. So we have this like Paraform recruiter guide linked there, as well as our bootcamp resources. So there are some So this is where you can find all of the recordings for session one, two, and three. But then, like next week, once we run session one, we'll replace that with an updated recording. If you Once you activate, there's not necessarily a need to consistently watch these boot camps, but if you haven't activated, we really recommend you continue to join these sessions just because there are like platform updates. And so sometimes you may want to join those just to see anything that's new. And we'll call out things as the sessions go on. So, yeah, so that's kind of explanation there. And I will pass it off to Aaron.
Awesome.
Or Sean, who's
Me.
oh,
Yeah,
okay.
you can mute. Apologies, we're all in the same room, so I want to make sure that we're not getting you guys feedback on your end with the audio. But awesome. So today we're going to kind of dive deep a little bit and kind of just like the value of working with an AM. As you guys can see, we have two AMs on the call with us, and they'll kind of deep dive a bit into just like success and like best practices that they've found with recruiters in their book, and really successful recruiters. Specifically. So I'll let them speak more on that. However, I kind of wanted to just quickly touch on just like the value of working with an AM and kind of overall what some stats and data we've seen since recruiters ended or left our books and into theirs. So with that, we found that per recruiter, each recruiter is making actually more hires with a dedicated account manager. So actually, they're getting close to three times the amount of hires that they're getting in their books than our books. Some just like quick context on that as well. Our books of me, Karina, and Sean's are just a little bit, not a little bit, a lot bit bigger. And so AM's books are just a little bit smaller. They can kind of give you a more personal approach and a lot more of like a one-on-one session with them. So they can get a lot just like more into the nitty-gritty with you guys. So kind of also with that, we found that recruiters working with an AM also get 2.7 times the amount of first round interviews. And then also this next stat is more recruiters in general are also making hires on the platform. So not only are each recruiter making more personally, just more recruiters on the entire platform are also making more hires. They're making 2.6 more recruiters are making hires. So the we have like the bottom line here is that a recruiter with a dedicated AM operates at roughly 2.5 to 3 times the output of if they are in one of our books. So obviously our goal is really to kind of get you guys to that next stage and get you guys upgraded to be in their books so that you just can kind of keep the success going. Great. So now I'll pass it over to Sean to kind of go over the different verticals our AMs are set up as.
Yep.
Oops.
Thanks,
Sorry.
Aaron. Um, so yeah, you might be thinking, well, I hope that, all these niches apply to me. Maybe you do different things and you kind of skew outside. The good news is pretty much have every vertical covered, ranging from software engineering, go to market, ops, as well as people that are in agencies, which I know some of you may be. The exciting news is, yeah, there's an AM for each of these niches. So Aaron, if you want to go to the next slide. So yeah, if you work any of these niches, you're going to see who your future account manager would be. So for all my go-to-market folks, you would be with Russell. For anyone who does software engineering, which is probably the large priority of you guys, that's kind of spread between Eunice, Alex, as well as Camila. Eunice and Alec, who does niche, are also in this call, and they're going to be kind of speaking with you guys. So really exciting stuff to come forward.
Okay, great. That's kind of end of our session. So now I'm gonna hand it over to the AMs. They have their own deck that they're gonna go through. And so I'll stop sharing this one and get to the next one. Mm. Oop, I did it again. Awesome. Okay, I'll mute myself. You guys might want to quickly start with just an intro, even though we kind of just said it, but still.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Eunice. We'll be chatting through a bit and focusing really on sourcing and submitting today and like going over kind of a playbook that we've seen successful recruiters on Paraform kind of execute against. Aaron, if you go to the next slide really quickly. So I'll be covering kind of best practices overall, kind of what we'll be covering overall today, and then what to prioritize on Paraform. I think Paraform is like a great platform, and there are a lot of tools on there, but it can get kind of overwhelming. So really just narrowing that down a little bit for you. And then Alec, my colleague, is going to chat about sourcing and submitting and really deep diving on some of the best practices that we've seen there. You can go to the next one, Erin. Great. So just generally, like we are here to help you make placements and really trying to like everything that we've built from a toolings perspective, but also even just having account managers exist to try and get you placements. And so really today we wanted to chat through like what separates the good recruiters from the excellent ones. And it's all based on kind of submissions that we've analyzed occur on the platform. So there are two key points in the pipeline that we've seen really like where kind of like separates the good recruiters from the excellent ones. The first one is submission. I think that's overall in recruiting, to be quite honest. But really getting that first interview, fewer than half submissions on Paraform ever earn a first round interview. And it's almost always a hiring manager making that decision. So really making sure that you're selecting the right candidate, matching it to the right role, is probably like a really crucial decision-making point when you're working on Paraform. Secondly, is surviving the mid-round. As you can kind of see here, about 1 in 5 mid-rounds advance. And what we've seen work well is recruiters who are close with the candidate are able to be there to help them prep. Is really kind of like the deciding factor and the changing it between a candidate going from a mid-round to then getting a final. And then once they get a final round, the odds of them getting an offer and getting hired drastically increases. You can go to the next one now, Erin. So leading into your first submission, and this is kind of like the bulk of what we wanted to talk about today, is one, going over the overall Paraform strategy that we recommend. So as you've been playing around with the platform, I'm sure you've noticed there's something called primary roles, and then we also have an ability for single submissions. I'll dive into this a little bit deeper, but primary roles is really just dedicating yourself to a role, and then we recommend then supplementing that with single submissions. Secondly, the executing piece of it around sourcing and submitting, around choosing the role from reaching out to the candidate and how to screen and submit. We'll kind of chat through some of the tooling and some of the things that we've seen work really well here. And you really do need both in order to succeed on Paraform and not waste time. You can screenshot this. I would recommend screenshotting this page. It's just like a quick one pager to kind of with everything that we'll be covering today and even then some. Today, what we're really going to be focusing on is the before the submission piece and the submission piece. And we'll probably be chatting through what happens after you submit on a later date. But feel free to screenshot. Okay. This will be on YouTube too, YouTube as well. So like if you weren't able to, you can go back and look for it later. Erin, next. So really what to prioritize on Paraform, it's really working the primary roles is probably where we've seen the most success. And I have some numbers to show in the next slide to kind of talk through that. But really focus on working primary roles and submitting unique candidates. Those are kind of like the two pieces to really, really increase your chances on making placements on Paraform. So the reason why we stress primary roles is what we've seen, how it performs versus a single sub. And the difference between the two is primary roles is really like, I would kind of almost consider it as if you're working with a client. So you decide to work on this role, you build a book against it and you source against it. And then really like go deep into that role. And so we've seen that if you look on the right-hand side, that recruiters who do have primary role slots make 2 times more, have a 2 times higher placement rate compared to just working single submissions. They make 121% more earnings every year, and the speed to first placement is faster. It's about 55% faster than single submissions. Single submissions is really candidate first, and I understand that a lot of you probably do focus on the candidate, but we really recommend using that almost as kind of like a supplement to your primary roles. So if you have a strong candidate come through, obviously you still want to have them and help them find a role. But we would recommend doing that as an addition to primary roles. Next. And then the stress on unique candidates, that just like increases your funnel. And then also Paraform has tooling on the platform that kind of just helps and like compounds the success every time you add in an additional unique candidate. So submitting a unique candidate, we then have an AI tool called Pair AI. You'll probably see some noise and chatter about it on LinkedIn today. But we have a tool called Pair AI that then after your first submission, it starts matching the candidate to roles and surfacing them to hiring managers so that they can express interest. And then it just leads to more interviews and hires. And then the candidate first tooling, we got a lot of feedback around this. And so this is why we had like maybe a month ago, we launched some additional, I think, more candidate first friendly products and tools on the platform to make it easier. So one is recommended roles. We now surface recommendations on your profile that we think are best fit based on our ML learning models and AI. And then when you're looking at a candidate and looking and checking and see what roles you should submit them to, we have an AI calibration. And then you can then single submit the candidate. Your weekly allowance is scaled with your interview rate. So the higher your interview rate, the more single submissions you get. But this is kind of like also like kind of like an all-encompassing flow to help with getting more success on single submissions. And then lastly, another important thing that's a little bit off platform, but we did want to like briefly touch on this is your recruiter brand. We recommend both a clean website and a professional LinkedIn. So in terms of website, a simple one that you can probably build using AI to kind of draft a bio and also like a simple kind of tagline will really improve your branding with candidates. And then obviously a sharp LinkedIn profile, making sure that you have a headline, a clean headshot and banner, and an about you page so that candidates can check and see and get a sense of who you are on LinkedIn. And that's it. I'm going to then pass it now to Alec, who will really dive deep into sourcing and submitting.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Glad we're going over this. Sourcing and submitting is going to be the largest lever that as a recruiter on the Paraform platform that you can pull. So getting these right will definitely align with future success. So again, the most crucial step, I'd say that you can break it into 6 motions that we'll go over today. All of these complemented by working primary roles, but consider them as you're even single submitting. And then another thing to keep in mind throughout all of this is where can I leverage AI both on the platform and externally to help me move through these faster to compound your efforts. So first, make sure you're choosing roles that you can win. This can look a few different ways. Knowing the vertical, being familiar with the company, being able to tell their story, and then comparing it against other roles on the platform. Is this one ready to move? When you're sourcing against the roles that you've selected, assuming that you're moving in a role first fashion, make sure that you're sourcing candidates who meet the must-haves. You'll see this in intake calls and in the role pages. There will be several things that the hiring managers are looking for. A few of them are defined as must-haves. What we've seen in the data is it's pretty much impossible to argue across or past a must-have. So if they're mentioned that they need 2 years of software backend experience, engineering experience, make sure that they have that. Once you've found those candidates, make sure that you're reaching out in a way that will actually, garner a reply. As I'm sure you all know in this industry, talented people are being reached out to often. You want to make sure that your outreach stands out and gets them engaged. As you're moving forward, now that you have a candidate that you're speaking with, screen them well. They may have looked good for the role initially. Double check that. See if there's other roles that make sense for them. Understand their preferences and their history well, so you can move forward confidently with them. Make the submissions to the obvious matches, and make sure that those matches are obvious to the hiring manager. The recruiter, the candidate. you understand what the hiring manager is looking for, connect those dots for them so it makes the decision to move forward easy. And then finally, Paraform as a platform really incentivizes speed. So move quickly. When you see an opportunity, jump on it. That will work out best for you, the candidate, the hiring manager, and everyone involved. So we've touched on primary roles. Again, we very much encourage this be the engine that you use to drive your participation on the platform. There's no one way to work on Paraform, but as the data that Eunice went over earlier suggests, we see that this is the most effective and efficient. So how do you pick roles? I'm sure you've gone over the browse roles tool at this point. This is the number one way to find things. As you develop relationships with internal members, we can also help there. But make sure that you're browsing roles with intent. They're constantly updating. Follow your network. So look for roles that fit people that are already in your pipeline, people that you know you have like vehicles to make contact with, and complement those roles with other roles that kind of cluster together. If you're working one back-end software engineering role and you're committing a lot of sourcing to that effort, it might not make sense to bring on a design role where the candidates are in no way fungible across. Try to know the roles that are similar to each other so you can make your sourcing efforts exponentially more effective on the platform because you're able to cross submit. And then finally, not to paint anybody in a corner, but try to stick to verticals that you know. If you've never worked a robotics role, maybe leaning only into robotics isn't the right move. Not that you can't get there. But then if you know design very well, that's probably the right place to be. Leverage your experience to make sure that you're operating in a space that you can win. Number one thing when you're moving forward, regardless of the path that you take, whether candidate first or role first, is to know the role and make sure that your candidate understands it. We've got a few things that can really help with this. The first two being super important in the sourcing and matching and submission stage. And the final one being a little bonus tip of how to make sure that your candidates stand out as they are interviewing on the platform. The first one being role brain, or I believe it's referred to often as Parabot. You can find it in the platform. This thing is very useful. I use it for my work and encourage all recruiters in my book to make sure that they're using it as well. It's effectively an AI chatbot that's familiar with the entire platform. It can be helpful before you source. When you have a question, it's really just the best way to dig through everything in that complex role page and have those answers delivered to you. The next is a role recap. This can be helpful for you as well as the candidate. So it's going to step you through the most important things in the role. It can also be shared with the candidate so they align themselves with the expectations of the hiring manager and go into that first interview briefed and ready to go. And then finally, something that I suggest to all of the recruiters that I work with, and it's probably familiar to you, but worth making sure that you take the time and do well, is creating some sort of prep for your candidates as they move through. If you've gotten that first round interview, make sure that the candidate going in is super familiar with the role. They know what the hiring manager is looking for. They have questions prepared. That's their opportunity to stand out, and making sure they're aware of that and you feel confident that they're representing your brand well will help you stand out relative to other recruiters and other candidates. So this is the role brain in action. I think this is maybe, if you're able to zoom in, this is probably worth screenshotting as well. You can see just how precise it can get in its answers for just how wide of a range of questions. So in the session that you see here, I've asked the role brain or Parabot, hey, summarize the rejection feedback for this role. So this RPM role has been on the platform for some time. It's run a few people through the interview stages. And at this point, we've started to calibrate, okay, what does the hiring manager know? What do they need? And what are they looking for? This quick summary will help you prep your candidate and also help you screen for candidates that could fit. So really stress this. Use the role brain Parabot whenever you can. Few examples of ways you can use it, but it's not limited at those on the right here. Facts about the role, the company, sourcing guidelines. Hey, who should I be looking for? Where can I source them? Insights into the pipeline and the client. Is this hiring manager responsive? Should I be worried that it's been 24 hours, or is this just kind of the way they typically work? Summarize the intake call. Watch the intake call, but then also walk away with a summary of it. And then finally, like interview processes and rejection reasons. Make sure you understand how things have been going so that you can jump right in and be successful, leveraging the learnings and experiences that have happened along the way. How to tell what is a must-have. So not every hiring manager is created equal. Not all of them communicate the same way. It's really important to be able to parse through a role page and a JD and understand these are the things that a candidate absolutely needs to have to be able to move forward. So you can see on the left, there's a kind of a messy prose of what a hiring manager is looking for. Then on the right, where you can pull out the 4 must-haves. I suggest doing this for any role that you're actively working. It'll be worth your time and the candidate's time. Know what they are looking for and be able to define it clearly in one line. Again, going back to the last page, role brain and the intake call will be super helpful here. The JD is also worth reviewing. And then if things are still unclear, don't move forward in ambiguity. Reach out to people on the inside here at Paraform once you're connected to an AM in particular, and ask them to help you understand, hey, what's going on with this role? What should I be most focused on? Next, sourcing. You want to source where the right people actually are. On the right, you can see an ideal candidates page. This is going to be in the majority, if not all, of the role pages, where the hiring manager has clearly defined who they are looking for, from company to universities to types of experiences. The role brain, also on the right side, does a really good job of summarizing this as well. Understand what they're looking for and then go find that archetype. Start with ideal candidates, target companies and schools that reliably produce that ICP or that archetype, and don't just search titles. Titles are getting, like every day, a little more complex. Not every title looks the same. So look for people who have similar experience. Another great way to source that I think is underleveraged on the Paraform platform is referrals from other candidates you've worked with. They have a network, they trust you, leverage that trust to break into their network and find other people of similar talent and motivation. And then also, there's third-party talent networks that are worth looking into. For engineering, Discord communities are huge. Alumni groups, trade associations, YC, VC portfolios. There's lots of ways. These are wellsprings of very talented people who are often looking for people to represent them out in the market, and a great place to go to keep an evergreen pipeline of people that you can connect to roles. Again, there's an opportunity to leverage AI here, and I highly suggest it. Ask Claude, hey, here's the ICP, here's the schools I'm looking to tap into, here's the role, where should I start my search? And that's going to be a great way for you to move quickly through a lot of people. Next, you found the right person, but you really want them to answer. Knowing who they are is only helpful if they know who you are. So a few things to make sure that you're doing. Warm paths are the best. Again, a referral is going to get you in the door. You're not going to compete with the deluge of in-mail that everybody sees every day. You'll want to lead with the opportunity, be clear about compensation, keep things short and scannable. Most of the individuals you're reaching out to, they're busy, and you don't want to look like spam or some sort of like major mental task for them to take on. And finally, follow up. According to our sequencing data, so outreach that's been done through the Paraform platform, the majority of people who move forward with a recruiter, it's not on the first outreach, it's not on the second, it's on the third. So make sure that you're following up and give them plenty of opportunities to engage with you. Few more things to keep in mind. Small targeted audiences work better than large sends. Again, this is borne out in our data. If you're sending an email blast to 200 people, things are going to get caught up in spam folders. They're going to read as impersonal. I would suggest more sequences with smaller audiences. Avoid generic information, and then be sure that you're leaning into the opportunity that you have ready to present to them. Aaron, next page if you don't mind. So let's talk about what gets attention and what gets ignored. Clear subject lines that lead with the hook. Specific hook into why you've reached out to them. One thing that I would suggest is if you are writing a 4-sentence outreach as your initial outreach, lead with something about them, why you targeted them, and then have the generic stuff. Have AI create that about the role and why they should be interested. Make the opportunity clear, and then give them a clear ask. Let's hop on a call. Give them less reason to reject and more reason to move forward. And then, of course, 2 to 3 follow-ups is going to make the most of your efforts. Things that get ignored. Generic, I have an exciting opportunity, or we're hiring. That just kind of gets drowned out by the rest of the emails and in-mails that people are getting. Copy and paste impersonal messages. People want to know why you've reached out to them. If you have a clear reason why they're the candidate that you're interested in speaking to, they're going to be more interested in moving forward. There's a reason they fit. They feel better about their prospects. Try not to cram too many roles or opportunities into one message. This is a good way to utilize primary roles while still keeping a candidate first focus. Have a primary role that you're proud of and you're excited about, that you believe in the company's mission. Use that as the hook. And if they're not interested in that one, or during your screening it doesn't quite fit, find other roles that fit for them on the platform. Chances are we have stuff that they would look good in front of. And then also make sure that you are clear about an opportunity. Give them the comp, give them a reason, and follow up. We have plenty of tools on the platform to help with this effort. On the right, you can see our sequencing tool. This is doing the lion's share of work for all of the recruiters in my book, and I'd imagine the same is true across the platform. It's a one-stop shop. It also will allow you to leverage the various tools that we've built to support these sourcing out efforts in one place. So email sequences, up to 5 steps, auto stops on reply, and then analytics for you to judge, hey, what's working for me, what's not. Also curated lists. Once you've gotten a contact with a candidate, but you don't have the right role for them, let them tell you which roles they're interested in. Use our suggested roles to show them roles that the machine learning model thinks they'll have a good opportunity at landing an interview with. Leverage these insights as often as you can. And then finally, our Chrome extension. This can help avoid duplicated outreach. It can help move faster, as well as give you analytics to adjust and iterate off of. Matching, as Eunice said at the beginning, is the #1 opportunity for you to make sure that your time is well spent on Paraform. 57% of submissions never earn a first interview. The reason for that is because the hiring manager sees the JD, sees the resume, and it doesn't match, in their opinion, to the JD. You're going to want to make sure that the must-haves are checked, that the intake call, you've mined it for any other information that might suggest somebody is a good fit versus not. And when you are screening a candidate for a potential role, if it's a no, trust that instinct. If they don't meet the must-haves, trust that instinct, but don't waste that candidate. You already have a warm introduction. Find something else for them. The hardest thing is to gather the talent. Don't let that be wasted effort just because they didn't fit for this one particular role. And then finally, as you're going through that process, know the verticals on the platform. You'll see repeat customers. You'll see repeat people representing the roles on our side, and understanding kind of what the lay of the land looks like on Paraform for a vertical that you're familiar with will set you up for success. While you're screening a candidate, have a decision in mind. You'll want to know, is this a go or no go situation? So do they meet the clear must-haves? Can they quantify their impact? Can they communicate their story well? Or is their resume true? And are they showing genuine interest in the opportunity? All of that is good news. Move forward with them, move quickly. But if that's a no, find something else for them. If all of those things are true, but they're not genuinely interested in the opportunity, okay, you now understand that about them. You can calibrate better for an opportunity that looks more attractive to them. You'll want to slow down when they're vague on scope. They can't explain job changes or gaps. They're lukewarm or non-committal, or their comp or location expectations don't really fit the role or their history. Keep an eye out for fraudulent candidates. It's a sad but growing trend in our industry and something you don't want to waste your time with. Slow down, understand, is this someone that will represent my brand well? Is this someone that my time and effort has a good chance of being fruitful on the other end? If the answer is no, move on to the next candidate who does meet those standards. A good tool to use here is Periscribe. This will record your video calls with candidates for you to refer back to in the future, as well as submit during an application process so that the hiring manager can get real evidence of the same promise that you saw in the candidate. All right, so you have the right person, you've screened them, they look good. Now it's time to make that claim to the hiring manager. Make it obvious. Don't give them a reason to say no. And part of that is removing some of the mental load or mental lift that they have to understand this is the right person. Create scannable, short, to the point submissions. So bulleted submissions as opposed to prose or like paragraphs written out perform significantly better on our platform. We've seen it. A lot of these hiring managers are busy. We're representing a lot of startups and they're wearing 4 or 5 hats. Give them no reason to scan past something and say it's not worth my time. Be very upfront about why the candidate matches the role that they're looking for and make it obvious. So map everything back to the must-haves and why they are clearly fit for the role, and quantify at least one thing. People love to see a number on the page. Do not try to write around a gap. If they do not have some of the experience that is needed for the role, you're not going to be able to make the case typically within that submission. In rare occasions does it happen, but for the most part, if they don't fit the role, they don't fit the role. And then another opportunity to leverage AI. Run that through, create the submission, double check it, get suggestions. How can I make this clearer? How can I leverage this opportunity to present my candidate and give them the best chance? It's good to have somebody to work off of there, and it's not perfect, but AI offers you some feedback quickly. And then going back to it, it is a reality on Paraform. Speed is important. Move quickly. If you see a role just pop open and you make some contact with some potential candidates, don't wait. Don't overthink. Look for the clear flags that they're the right person to move forward, and invest in that. Make this submission and keep the ball moving. It's important to move quickly. There's a lot of talented recruiters. There's a lot of talented candidates that fit for roles. You want to make sure that yours is up front and center as quick as possible. And I believe that's it. Yeah. So those are a few of the things that we see work best and the things that we're coaching people who have been on the platform for some time to do to make sure that their efforts are efficient and effective and they're making money. Aaron, Karina,
Yes.
hand it back to you.
I'm trying to Stop sharing my screen. Awesome. We have around 5 minutes left. I think while we have our AMs on the call, we can kind of go over some Q&A. I've seen that there was some questions sent during, so I'm gonna pull them up. You guys can also pull them up, yeah. All right, let's see. Any, you guys were going over them, any of you? I think just
I see one question around, is it ever worth um, like, schools as a nice to have or must have? Do you guys see that question? I'm happy to, I'll give my hand at answering that. So this is one where I would classify it more as a nice to have, but something worth paying very close attention. The issue is a top 25 or top 50 school is a little bit subjective. So depending on the angle that you take on that question, is it a top 25 business school or is it a top 25 software engineering school? Is it a top 25 generalist school? Just be prepared to be able to answer that. And if you feel like there's a concern that it's not clearly reflected in that candidate's resume, address it up front. Be clear why you feel like that expectation is met.
I also see a question about success of pair AI in the AI calibration in general. Sean did answer it. I mean, that honestly kind of sums it up well. Pair AI is also a great way to utilize just like overall bumping your first round interview rate as well. So 40% of all interviews on the platform are based from Pair AI. And so definitely utilize the success of that. We're seeing a lot of success with it with recruiters. However, if you're noticing that like first round interview rate may not be as high as you would like it to be, definitely encourage you to action the pair AI requests because those are automatic first rounds. Therefore, it's 100% success rate. So it's a great way to kind of boost your stats in that regard as well. So not only does it helps get candidates in the door, it also kind of helps stats for your profile as well.
Eunice, are you gonna? I see you're gonna take that question on. Okay.
Yeah, I can take it. There was a question around if they fit all the criteria for a role, but there is one, must have that they don't hit. Like, for example, having worked at an early stage startup should be still submit a candidate. Um, I would say probably not because the must-haves and the deal breakers are set by the hiring manager. So almost I would say 90+% of the time, if someone is not hitting that deal breaker, it's probably going to be a rejection, as well as, I've seen situations where the hiring manager starts to get like a little bit frustrated at recruiters that are submitting candidates that aren't hitting those deal breakers. If anyone else wants to chime in with some advice there, I know it's a little bit of a gray area, but that's kind of just what I've seen.
I'd agree with everything that was said, particularly when the must-have is quantifiable. If it's qualifiable and you have a question around it, one good thing to reach out about, maybe even consult Rollbrain about. But if it's quantifiable, it's unfortunately hard to argue past that in a space where they have other candidates to view. Another place that you can look, if you've seen rejection on that role, based on that limitation, that's going to be the clear signal that that's not something they're willing to give ground on.
Cool. I see a question. Is there a way to see if a candidate is working with another recruiter on Paraform before trying to submit them? So no, there isn't. But when you submit, we have flags on our platform to let you know that the candidate has already been submitted to that role by another recruiter or even potentially like in the company's ATS system. So like maybe like they've already interviewed with the company before.
Also, a specific place to look for that is in Chrome extension. Always shows the flags if they're eligible or not. Also, we're working on getting this more accessible for you guys as well. So it should show you before actually clicking the submit button. It should show up in the role page. Yes, we're at time. We do see the questions though coming in. Those are all recorded. And then we'll do the same thing we always do. We'll answer them and then kick them back to you guys. But again, this recording will be on our YouTube channel. We'll circle this. We'll do our follow-ups that we normally do. Again, next week, if you're new or newer on the platform, next week we'll start Bootcamp 1 all over again and going into the month of September. So more to come and we'll communicate all this out. But definitely want to say a huge thank you to the AMs for joining and presenting today. I know they shared a lot of great information and I know you guys appreciate it. So huge thank you to them. But yeah, with that, feel free to reach out to any of us with any questions, and we'll end it here.